It says somewhat predictably, a number of the musicians involved opted to do a more traditional version of the Hendrix song, efforts that match more accurately the original work of the acclaimed guitarist. Still, a select few decided instead to put together radically different interpretations which match their own personal style more accurately. Enter The Cure and Robert Smith's unbelievable version of the classic.
It's showtime, folks.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Into the Music. I'm John, he's Andy, and we're here to talk about music.
Aye.
To see how it works. Andy, you have a song for me. Do tell.
I do. It is interestingly enough, it's a band and a song that you've heard of both before, I'm sure.
What's
but
the point then? What's the point?
Well, here's the curveball. This is actually, and kind of sticking in the same vein of what I've been throwing you recently a little bit, are like covers. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll stick with that motif one more round before we give it a rest. And that cover is of Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. And it's performed by none other than The Cure. So
really,
yeah, interesting band doing a Hendrix song was the first thing I thought when I heard this, and then I heard the song and I really liked the reimagining of it. Kind of wanted to know your opinion on it, and I was actually kind of surprised to hear that you haven't heard this before.
no.
So all right, well, go off, give this a listen, and let me know what you think of what Robert Smith and the boys have done with this track, this classic.
Sure. Okay, I'm not sure about the sort of housey beat. It's okay though. I really like what they've done, the way they've done the guitars. It's that early-ish classic Cure sound where the guitars are distorted and there's heavy reverb on them. They sound expansive and floaty, sort of like the 17 Seconds era. Really nice. And his voice, he does this a lot. He doesn't always do it, but he sort of heavily produces his voice and then overlays it with other vocal tracks. So it has this sort of echoey, ghosty feel, like he's singing from the bottom of the cellar or something. But with all Cure songs, really good Cure songs, it's about the atmosphere that he creates. This is another lovely, unsettling atmosphere, which I really like. So yeah, good start. That's nice. That bass sounds great. Bring out every last drop. It's one of those ones that's mesmerizing. It gets into that atmosphere, that mood. You're in a bubble with them floating away, and it could go on for 5 minutes, 17 seconds, or 25 minutes, 17 seconds, and then you wake up. Yeah, I really like that. Really like that. Back to Andy. Okie dokie. What do you want to know?
Not at all your feelings on the song. No.
Right,
What did you have for dinner? No. What do you what do you think of this sort of different version of
I'll say straight off that I'm a big-ish Hendrix fan. Got quite a bit of his stuff. I don't, although it's a much loved song, I don't put it in his upper echelon of songs.
Mhm.
It's not what for me. his best songs. So I wasn't wedded to it, you know, and I was quite open to a cover. So that's a, you know, plus for a start, you know. I wasn't closed-minded about it. So I was not sure about the start at all. The sort of the beat that was put on there. But I'll let that go. So yeah, it was an interesting take, and it's also an interesting iteration of the Cure because he does stuff in different styles. I mean, overall, when you hear a Cure song, you know it's a Cure song, but he does it in different ways and has done through his career. In terms of the Cure, I'm really familiar with the stuff from the start up to Disintegration, and I kind of fell off the wagon after that. But yeah, there's a wonderful guitar in here, really nice sound to it. It's distorted, it's floaty, dreamy, it's expanded. He made some interesting choices, you know, which he's done before and stuff. So his voice, and he has done this before, and it's really an odd thing, but it does work. Is sometimes he does this overproduced version of his voice, and it's almost like he's not confident enough in himself, so to sing it naked. But he does in other songs, and it works brilliantly. You know, so it's just so weird. So there's layers of his voice, you know, in other bits coming and going, and sometimes even whispering as well. But what, and I'll get around to the summation in a second. But you know, the other thing about it is it had a real, I don't know when this was, but it had a real 90s, almost mid-90s feel to it. It's like a remix where they're trying to incorporate all different bits and pieces. Which kind of made me feel that perhaps somebody else worked with him on this, because it didn't seem completely like a Robert Smith thing. Because you've got this sort of the Cure sort of fuzzy, you know, dirty, you know, feel to it. There's also like a post-grunge element to it as well, which would appeal to the kids. But there's bits of almost house music elements to this with the beat.
Yeah.
Loads of samples. I mean, I think the bass was sampled, the two different bass bits, you know, at the beginning, and then like through when it breaks down. Again, it's those 2 or 3 notes just looped, you know. And there was even a housey piano at bits, but there was so much bloody going on, but it was all really low in the mix, which gave it a ghostly feel.
Yes, there is the sort of this ethereal, ghostly feel to the song.
And with Cure songs, there's different types of Cure songs, but Cure songs like this, it is all about the atmosphere. And he really captured an atmosphere here that left me in a sort of listening bubble, just floating away. And the song finished, I mean, I said in reaction, you know, it could have been 5 minutes, whatever, or 25 minutes, whatever. You're mesmerized, and it just floats and keeps you along. So although there's little bits of it that half annoyed me, actually the whole thing worked, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a very interesting, he didn't try and Hendrix it out, you know. There were some nice bits of guitar in there that, as I said, that extended guitar, you know, that's just chords, and then there was a bit more hectic one, but it wasn't face melting Hendrix stuff, you know. It was just enough, you know, to sort of give an impression of guitarness without trying to compete with the guy who wrote the fucking book on how to, you know, to do
precisely.
So,
and I love I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just to say, so in terms of how it was pitched, it was perfect.
Yeah.
You know, with their style as well. And they didn't go for, well, they went for a really popular one, you know, really popular one, but luckily not one of my favorites either. So all those things tick the boxes. And I really like the Cure a lot. You know, they have done stuff which I haven't enjoyed as much as others. But this would have been in the former. It was definitely one that I really appreciated and really enjoyed.
Yeah, this is I remember hearing this album. God, I was only, you were right, by the way, 93. So you're right in the wheelhouse of early to mid 90s. I heard this album, and I remember, and I knew a lot of Hendrix by this point, even though I was rather young, just because the music I grew up listening to. And I remember even at a young age being like wholly impressed with their version of this song versus a lot of the other content on this album, because a lot of
Yeah,
it,
I was going to
there's
ask,
no
what's it?
reinvent.
I saw
Right.
the thumbnail. What was the other ones like? Were they just trying to be?
Very much like
Oh, what a mistake!
going for the same cloth from which Hendrix cut to create the tracks that they were covering, which is neat. It's cool to hear the song in general, especially if you like the song. But if you don't, I have to imagine that they asked these people to do this so they would put their own spin on this and not just do like a
Yeah,
carbon copy. And a lot of it, I felt, a majority of this album was just people covering Hendrix straight up. And The Cure, to me, did the best job in paying homage to a great song and not just the man who wrote it. And by giving it this sound that you so eloquently described in sort of the summation of your reaction to it. Um, I also loved, as you mentioned, the guitar part, sort of the mixing of the guitar, that it wasn't in the forefront. You almost had to listen for the lead guitar parts in the Cure's iteration of this song, which was
yeah,
fun and more of a nod than a like ham-fisted way to try to replicate a guy's talent who, is that even, can you even replicate that? You know what I mean? So it was just, to me, this was the most genius um cover on the entire album. And
I've I've just pulled up the thumbnail on YouTube just to remind me who else was on there. So you
mhm.
got Eric Clapton, yeah, I can imagine. Spin Doctors, I was never keen on them anyway.
Yeah.
Um, Buddy Guy's a bit of a legend, actually. I don't know what he's doing on there. Body Count, as in Ice-T Body Count.
I think so. Yeah. God, it's been a while
That
since
would
I've
be
listened to this album,
interesting.
but I do think
Um,
so.
Seal and Jeff Beck. Well, I can imagine what Jeff Beck would do. I mean, he's a great musician. Nigel Kennedy. Pretenders again. I don't think it lends. I don't know what song they would have done, but it doesn't.
They
Slash
did
and
they
Paul.
did Bold as Love.
Really,
Yeah. And it's a pretty good version too, to be honest with
that's
you. And
that's bold.
yeah, yeah. See what you did there. But yeah, that's a pretty good version as well.
Slash and Paul Rogers with Band of Gypsies. With Belly. I really like Belly actually, but I don't know what they
Mhm.
were doing. Thinking of that. Living Color. Never liked them. Pat Metheny is a very good guitarist. And MACC. Never heard of them. It's interesting.
MACC is oh god, Mike McCready, Jeff, what's his name, and Matt. What they're it's basically an amalgam of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. So it's some of the
Right.
guys from Pearl Jam, some of the guys from Soundgarden, and one of the guys from Soundgarden happens to be Chris Cornell. I just think it's an acronym for all their first names, or Cornell, just Cornell. But so that I mean, talented musicians, but again, they're not coloring too much outside the lines when it comes to performing a rock song in a rock fashion.
Yeah.
They come from rock, right? So
Yeah.
um yeah, there are some, it is an album worth scoping out. Just go in there knowing that probably 80-ish% of it is they're 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 not thinking outside the box in any way, shape, or form. Great songs, but not thinking outside the box very much, which is like, for me, and I think this was the first track on the album. Yeah, it is. So it's like
Yeah.
this barnstormer of like a like reinvention, and then
Yeah.
after it, you kind of just you fall into the mold of
Yeah.
again, good stuff, but not, it's not like, whoa, this is blowing my mind how they redid this, which is really how I felt when I heard the Cure's version of Purple Haze. It's the track that stuck with me the most. And this was that weird time in the early and mid 90s where like all of these record companies were doing tribute albums to like 60s legends. Like I think I have the like Working Class Hero, the John Lennon tribute album that they did. And there's some interesting songs on that as well, but there's also some ones where it's just like, oh, this is just a straight up cover. So
Yeah, I've got a few of these sort of tribute albums. I don't know why, but I've just happened to have them. So I'm just looking now on my sort of digital library. Of the Oh, that was a good one. If I Was a Carpenter, mainly because Sonic Youth do their version of Superstar, which is just awesome. There's some shite on there, actually. I haven't said that. Yeah. There was a really interesting one. I'm just trying to find it. Let me see what it was called. It's one of his songs. But God, I had that album. Sorry. Step Right Up, the songs of Tom Waits. Now that's probably the best sort of other bands doing versions.
Yeah, well, there's a lot you could do with Waits music, right? You sort of really have a vast landscape from which to like do new things, or in which to do new things. So
well, they picked some really interesting people to do his stuff, and as you know, I'm not sure when there's not like really late stuff on here, so there's a lot of mid and early stuff, but they took Tindersticks, Pete Shelley. Pete Shelley's version of Better Off Without a Wife is just awesome. And it's very different to the first. He sings it almost like it's a theme tune to a kid's TV show on Saturday morning. It's just brilliant. Red Shoes by the Drugstore by The Wedding Present is, again, one of the best covers of a Tom Waits song I've ever heard. Violent Femmes do a great one. Alex Chilton, him of Big Star fame. Hail Saints, Tim Buckley, Prenti, and 10,000 Maniacs. There's some really awesome ones there. And there was another one I had, which was something like my father knew the Beatles or something, but it's all sort of bluesy or R&B, versions of Beatles songs, and that's hit or miss. But when it hits, it really hits. But I was going to ask you, sorry. We're going all over the place.
No. I mean, we're on the topic of all these damn tribute albums that were coming out.
Yeah, and there were some real sort of stinkers as well. I remember. Yeah. But no, going back to Jimi Hendrix, and you said you had an interest in him as well. When you got this. So, what is your favorite Hendrix track? And when people say there's no right or wrong answer, there is.
See, there's so many to pick from, and there's so many good ones that I would imagine I'm about to select. I would say, what is it? Wind Cries Mary.
Oh yeah, that's a lovely one.
That's probably my favorite. But there's so many damn good ones. You know what I mean?
There is. You can't get a decent version on YouTube, right? But there's an album. I don't know if it came out in the States, but it came out in this country. It's called Jimi Hendrix Radio 1. And it's all the sessions he did for the BBC Radio 1. He even does a jingle for Radio 1. It's the best ever jingle you've ever heard. Just from the car. But he does a version of Driving South on here, which is my favorite Hendrix track of all time. It's instrumental. It's just insane. And if you ever get the chance, if you go on YouTube and have a look, there is countless people who are tempted to do a guitar track, play along. With varying levels of success. And there are huge gaps in between little bits he does, and they're just going. It's just. I bet there's one guy, I think he's a Japanese guy, who absolutely shreds it.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing is, he's just got the camera close on his, his fingering and his playing, so you can just see the amount of work he is doing just to keep up with Hendrix, and it's just brilliant. So I'd highly recommend that. That's just my 2 pence worth. But
I would also
this
say
is really cool.
Voodoo Child and Bold as Love is are 2 other really great Hendrix songs that I do love a lot.
When I was younger, it was Crosstown Traffic was always like the one for me in the car. It was awesome, But now you get a bit older, and it's the bluesy ones, Red House and all. I just absolutely adore, When he just jams the blues, he is, it's perfection.
Second to none, man. Second to none. It's funny. I found this article, and it's from Far Out Magazine. And they're talking about this album, and it's actually a really recent article, if I'm not mistaken. So it's interesting that they're going back this far to talk about this album at length. But it says, somewhat predictably, a number of the musicians involved opted to do a more traditional version of the Hendrix song. Efforts that match more accurately the original work of the acclaimed guitarist. Still, a select few decided instead to put together radically different interpretations which match their own personal style more accurately. Enter The Cure and Robert Smith's unbelievable version of the classic. opting to run with Purple Haze, the second single released by the Hendrix Experience in '67, The Cure added a splattering of their famed 80s synth style while sampling Hendrix, a whole bunch of otherworldly sounds. During their rendition, The Cure takes us into a new realm, if one-upping Hendrix on transformative tunes is even possible. So yeah, they're speaking pretty highly of what Robert Smith and The Cure did versus a lot of the other artists that were selected to do this tribute album. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and you kind of picked up what I was hoping you would, which was this is a really cool, almost like when the levees break. Like, don't go into it looking to hear like your local neighborhood cover band do this song at the pub. This is a different animal. And I love when artists do that with songs, because you're like getting a 2-for-1 out of a great song. Yeah. Like, it took one songwriting experience to gin up 2 awesome iterations of that tune. That's just a happy accident. I love it in music, so I figured I'd throw it your way and see if you dug it. And I'm glad it sounds like you did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? That you like an artist or whatever because of their creativity and what they can create.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to copy someone else is not creating anything, as far as I'm concerned, apart from perhaps a paycheck. Mm-hmm. Whereas taking their inspiration, and you have it in other forms of art, like fine art, painting, where Millet's paintings influenced Van Gogh hugely, and stuff like that. So it's much more interesting and satisfying to see somebody else. What would happen if he did a version of his song? And there's plenty that I would like to put together and see. There was loads came out. I've forgotten the name of the guy now, but there's a guy who did loads of reggae versions of Beatles songs, and some of them really worked and some of them didn't. But there's like a reggae version of Eleanor Rigby that's just beautiful.
I bet.
That sadness to it as well.
Yeah, you might have to. You might have to give me that, because I've never heard that, and I love reggae. And Eleanor Rigby is one of my favorite Beatles songs. So yeah, you might have to give me that.
It's also. I got some weird shit in my collection. So
I know.
There's they're called the Reggae All Stars, in a reggae version of OK Computer.
Oh wow!
Imagine. No,
I'm
not imagine.
Trying, but I'm coming up short here. Even my imagination has its limitations.
Karma Police is just beautiful. It really is. And it just makes me smile every time I think about it. And then I also had an album which was called Swinging to the Police, and it was big band versions of Police songs.
Oh my God.
With a whole, all that sort of stuff. Roxanne, no vocals at all. It's just, when you're in the mood, it's Glenn Miller in the mood. It's just brilliant, But again, sometimes it can fall flat, but it's fun. Anyway,
right on.
Enough of my craziness.
Well, yeah,
take us out.
Throw me some stuff, but why don't you put a bow on it for us, John?
Well, okay. So thanks for this, Andy. I really enjoyed this, and it was again interesting as well to see the workings of Mr. Smith's mind. Probably my second favorite Mr. Smith in the musical world. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks everybody for watching our ramblings. Wow, we covered some country lanes this time, didn't we? Talking away. Hope you got lost happy with us, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. Let us know. How else are we going to know that you enjoyed our ramblings? And if you haven't already subscribed, we are very close to hitting 5,000, and Greg is ever so excited about it. He really is. So make an old man happy by subscribing. That being said, thanks once again for watching, and we will see every single one of you on the next episode of It's Bonfire Night. So that's my Catherine wheel. Into the music.
See you guys.